Does anyone else want to learn how to play House Atreides? Because today we've got ourselves a how-to guide for the Green House, the protagonists of the game. We'll teach you everything you could want to know about House Atreides. We've named our chapters today after, let me step back. I read an interesting article about comparisons between the Atreides and Eren Yeager, the protagonist from Attack on Titan. And because the Attack on Titan manga has really great chapter names, I have borrowed some of those chapter names to divide up our guide today. So we will be using Attack on Titan chapter names. Let's get going. Chapter 1, A Dull Glow in the Midst of Despair. Who are the Atreides? Well, the Atreides at the time that this takes place are an up-and-coming house in the Landsraad, maybe the preeminent house, widely respected amongst the other great houses. They are possessed of several of the greatest minds and military minds in the galaxy, and the Atreides are on the verge of building a coalition, or at least a military force that might rival even the great House Corrino's Sardaukar. So, when the Harkonnens are scheming to bring down their rivals, the Atreides, House Corrino is more than happy to go along, and as a result, the Atreides are forced to Arrakis, where they die in the dark. At least some of them. But this is pre-Die in the Dark timeline. We've got the Duke Leto himself leading the charge here, and the Atreides are great. Why play the Atreides? Well, the Atreides have a defensive turtling playstyle. They do sort of a fast expansion land grab and then dare you to take that land back from them. Really strong defensive buffs, a strong above average army across the board, bordering on overpowered. I would say the Atreides are strong in just about all areas, which makes them relatively easy to play, relatively forgiving. They have very unique counselors that can be quite build-defining. Lots of really fun stuff. One of the few factions that has sort of equally good counselors across the board. If you randomed into the Atreides and got any of their 4 counselors, you could be pretty happy, I think. And they have maybe the greatest potential for fast expansion, or expansion in general. The potential for massive income of authority and discounts for expansion, and the vaunted peaceful expansion, allowing you to grab parts of the map that you can't even get to right now. We'll talk about more of that later. Why not play the Atreides? Why wouldn't you want to? Well, you might not play the Atreides because they're seen as a bit of a top dog right now. The Atreides, just being Atreides, may draw some aggro from the general lobby. They've had a lot of success lately, and people have just as maybe a couple patches back, Corrino felt very overpowering. Currently, the Atreides feel pretty overpowering. So, if someone's looking, if you've got a choice of who you got to go fight in the lobby, and you don't really feel strongly one way or another, a lot of people will defaulting to go and fighting the Atreides early rather than later, because the longer the game goes, the tougher they get to fight against. You might not play the Atreides because they have a bit of a weak economy and they can struggle to pay the bills. So you need to be relatively savvy, especially in your early game when you're still trying to set things up, because it's easy to go in the red and sometimes a little hard to get out of it. You might not play the Atreides because some of their special abilities and faction benefits are sort of a no-fun play style. They kind of shut off parts of the game that other people might be trying to take advantage of. We'll talk about that more later, but famously, Lady Jessica is my mom says we can't play, everyone's got to go home kind of play style. So the Atreides are sometimes seen as the no-fun faction because they stop people from doing stuff that would otherwise be fun and cool. Chapter 2, The beating of a heart can be heard. What makes them unique? Well, the banner benefit for the Atreides are the peaceful annexations on neutral villages. So this is quite simple. On any neutral village on the map, it's got this little flag above it, and you could click on that flag, and then and you will begin annexing it slowly. A normal annexation is, I believe, 1.5 days. A peaceful annexation is 5 days. And it costs a little bit of influence in addition to the normal authority costs, but it's totally invisible. And you don't have to fight the guys that are there. You don't have to have any units in the area. You could do it anywhere on the map. And after that 5 days, that land just suddenly becomes yours. And in fact, the units that were defending it are now your units that are defending it for you. So this allows expansion that enemies can't see, have a very difficult time stopping, and is really, really difficult to offer any sort of counterplay against. You can kind of see what everyone else is doing in the game at all times, except the Atreides, who you just kind of have to assume are probably annexing things or able to annex things. And the ability to do it anywhere on the map means if someone's likely to leave areas in their backfield empty for late capping, the Atreides can start grabbing those areas themselves and just making a general nuisance of themselves. It's a really, really powerful ability, the peaceful annexation. Also, the Atreides villages cost more authority to annex, and they take longer to liberate. Not a big deal, but it kind of plays into their defensive posture. It's harder to take land away from the Atreides. All their Solari upkeeps are reduced by 10%. That's like a, just a little bit of a benefit to their poor economic abilities. Of note, they cannot pillage neutral villages. This is a really big one. A lot of factions rely heavily upon the ability to identify villages that you're not going to take right now, and you can go and pillage them for a big economic boost, especially in the early game. Maybe you've overinvested and you're in the red. Well, you can just go and do a little more pillaging than usual to level out your economy until you get things right. The Atreides can't do that. No pillaging at all. I mean, you could pillage another player, but that's a bit of a taller order than just wandering in and kicking around some neutral militia. So without the economic benefit of neutral pillages, the Atreides can be difficult to balance economically, or rather, if you get unbalanced, it's harder to correct it because you don't have that sort of quick influxes of cash. Let's see. They have various benefits from the Landsraad, which are all honestly nice, but fairly forgettable. They're not really things that you play into. You'll get 10% more Solari if you're the target of a positive resolution. You'll get 10% more military power if you're the target of a negative resolution. I mean, that's cool. We don't hate those, but they're sort of difficult to play into. Everybody wants to be the target of positive resolutions. It's nice to get a little extra power if you're the target of a negative one, but honestly, it doesn't happen that often. You kind of could play the whole game without paying any attention to this at all. Ignoring the charter prerequisites for Landsraad standing is an interesting one. It gives them a little more political power than a lot of other factions. All of these charters, the Water Sellers, the Judge, the Speaker of the Council, Eye of the Council, they all have prerequisites, things you have to achieve before you could be up for the Council. If you're the Atreides, you only need the Landsraad standing. For example, to be Judge of the Council, you need to have accrued, I don't know, it's something like 1,000 experience points on your military units and have 250 Landsraad standing. Well, the Atreides just have to have 250 Landsraad standing, and boom, they're instantly able to be the Judge of the Council, so on and so forth. So you have easier access to a lot of the charters, especially earlier than other people can. So the Atreides can play as a strong political faction. I don't think politics is a very strong way to play currently in the meta, but the Atreides are one of the better political players because of it. Let's see. Also of note, you permanently will gain a 2% after 10k hegemony. You permanently will gain a resource production bonus if you get elected for a positive resolution. This is nice, but again, kind of forgettable. Everyone wants good, positive things to happen to them. The Atreides do a little bit more, but it only happens after 10k, and the game's probably not going to go that long. This is a relatively long game that I've played. I guess we're in month 8, and I've got 6 of those bonuses, so 12% more resource production. That's plenty nice, but it's not breaking the game in any way. But just, small benefits, and a lot of those are, the longer the game goes, the more beneficial they'll be too. So it also plays into the Atreides benefiting from these long turtly games. Let's talk counselors real quick, shall we? Let's step out of here and talk the counselors. I mentioned the Atreides counselors are all really good, so let's take a look at them. We start off with Thurfer Hawat, who is having his day in the sun. He is one of the most popular counselors currently. I think Jessica's probably the most popular one, but Thurfer is super good. Especially the people that are more veterans and have played more can really appreciate Thurfer. Thurfer says agents have one additional trait. So these are the agents that you get that you put on, Arrakis or Chom or other people and things like that. So one additional trait is, I'll show you that in game, but it adds up. It's a little better than you think it is. There's also a number of unique techs that play into Atreides agents. They have really, really strong agent gameplay. Even a little mini game almost that I'll sort of show you about. He can also hasten mission progress and construction of village buildings at the cost of Solari. That is usually no big deal and you won't use it too much, except when you really want to, and then it can be very useful. The likes of being able to, if you're getting assassinated, to be able to hasten your cell searches so you could get more cell searches out faster than other people could to defend against assassinations. Maybe you need to be able to hasten a supply drop to get some critical supplies down to soldiers who might otherwise die, and this makes it only take 1 day instead of 3 days kind of thing. Maybe you've peacefully annexed land right behind the enemy in their backfield, and they're going to come take it as soon as they can, but you hasten the building of all of your missile turrets and airfields there so you can quickly get defenses up and rush guys to help. Hasten's pretty cool. It's got a lot of neat uses. It's fairly expensive Solari wise, so you won't use it all the time, but when you do use it, it's super fun. Thurfer is great. I play him constantly. We've also got Dr. Wellington Yueh. Yueh seems like maybe the least exciting of everyone here, but he is just basically very solid. He gives you a base +2 knowledge, which is quite a big tempo boost. Tempo is always the speed at which the game is moving, right? Well, plus everyone starts with 5 knowledge, but if you've got Yueh, you start with 7 knowledge, which is a pretty big deal. That's 40% more than everybody else early in the game. So you are researching techs really quickly, getting off to a fast start. He also just gives you a blanket 10% more health on military units. A lot of Atreides bonuses lean into bonus health for their units, so even more health on top of all the other health is more good, more better. We like that. And then a little extra regeneration speed is useful as well. Yueh, always a solid pick. You're never sad to have him, but the other ones are slightly even more exciting, I think. Lady Jessica, the classic, probably the most iconic of the Atreides playstyle. Lady Jessica, the voice, can spend influence to force a truce with another faction. Someone wants to come take your land. They're coming to, and you're busy. You don't have time to send your gigantic Atreides army over to fight them. Well, Jessica spends 150 influence or something like that, and now they are forced into a peace treaty with you. And they need to wait or spend their own influence to break it, or they need to betray you to break it, taking all the various negative malices associated with betrayal. Maybe it's the end of the game and all the enemies are coming to fight you, and it's a 2v1, the 2 armies are marching on you. Well, maybe you could just instantly make peace with one of those armies, and suddenly it's a 1v1 that they weren't planning for, and the other guy needs to either betray you, or God forbid he's Ekaz and he can't betray you, and he's got to walk home wait for 10 days before he can legally break the treaty. Jessica has a lot of opportunity for some fun plays. She also now gives you the benefit of treaties taking no authority, so a really strong playstyle is playing Atreides, and maybe if you've got a friendlier lobby who is not too biased against the green, you can get up a lot of early treaties, early research treaties, early money Solari treaties, and really benefit the everyone else is usually pretty happy for money and for research. But if you've got money and research with 3 other players at once, or even just 2 other players at once, that could be a huge boost to your early game or end game power. And not having to pay the authority upkeeps is like a little cherry on top. People will be much more likely to sign up for that, and it is no skin off your back. You're happy to trade anything and everything with everybody. Heavy treaty play is a very strong way to play the Atreides. Furthermore, Jessica says if someone betrays you, they lose even more Landsraad standing than they would already lose, which is a little redundant because you already lose a huge amount if you betray someone, but I don't know, it's nice that it's there. Last we've got to talk about is young Paul Atreides, who is really, really good. Maybe the most situational, actually, and sometimes not good, but other times like incredibly overpowered. Young Paul produces 2 authority per allied siege. Then allying a siege reveals another siege, and the first one you reveal, it starts at a slightly higher relation level. So the young Paul gameplay is you're looking for sieges as soon as possible. You're trying to increase your relations with them and get an alliance with them. As soon as you do that, you get a big boost. +2 authority is a lot. That is, young Paul has the potential to give you more authority than anyone else in the game can get. You find a second siege, you ally that second siege, you're up to +4 authority. And these things are getting multiplied by things like your administration hall that give you 30% more on top of that. It's possible. I've seen +20. I think I've seen almost +30 authority, which is outrageous. People generally, if they're making a lot of authority, are probably making like 12. It's very easy to get into the +20s with the Atreides if you've got young Paul and a number of alliances with sieges. He is incredibly strong for expansion purposes. The situational part being the spawning of sieges on maps is often quite random, and it is entirely possible you may spawn in a map and not end up with any sieges in your land. And then young Paul isn't doing a single thing for you. He's not helping at all. It is also possible that you are playing a game with the Fremen in it, and all of those sieges that you are allying are continuing to be spawn points for the Fremen. So if or when they decide they want to turn their armies on the Atreides, all of those alliances that young Paul Atreides has been cultivating are huge weaknesses inside the Atreides lands. So oftentimes young Paul will not be picked into the Fremen because playing against the Fremen, you're often sort of forced to pillage those sieges to make sure that they're not these backline spawn points for them. And doing so means that young Paul can't be an ally with them. But when he works, oh lordy, he works. He's very, very strong. I typically play a Thurfer Hawat and a young Paul play style, or switch it up to Thurfer or Dr. Yui. Jessica I don't play as much because she's really good. I find her a little cheesy, actually, so I don't play her too often, but many Atreides players take great pride in their Jessica playstyle. In my example here, I've got a Jessica and a Thurfer Hawat on board. And a lot of my talk on this is going to be about the strengths of Thurfer because I think he's underappreciated. So we'll get into more of that later when we start talking developments and so on and so forth. But the gist is all counselors are viable and perfectly good for the Atreides. Chapter 3, The World That the Girl Saw. Let's talk expansion. Expansion is pretty easy with the Atreides. You know, you're going to start off, you're going to take your trooper, and you're going to make yourself a ranger. And the Atreides armies are so buff that a trooper and a ranger alone are going to beat the heck out of just about any militia in the game with very little micromanagement involved. If you throw in a heavy weapons squad, there's a really nice synergy. You know, the ranger is lowering the damage that the enemies do. The heavy weapons squad is reducing the armor that they have, and troopers are just these big, tough, tanky, dangerous boys. The trio here could easily beat any 4 militia defending towns, so you can get away with a pretty light force early in the game. You know, just these 3 guys can take just about anything you want them to take. You don't need the larger army to go around doing pillaging type stuff, right? So many other factions, Harkonnen, smugglers, even Corrino, Vernius, are all looking for pillage opportunities anytime they can get them. The Atreides can't pillage at all, so there's relatively little incentive to invest more into military early on in the game. So you can get away with a relatively thin force, but be aware that if people are looking to kick you around early in the game, you are going to need more troops as soon as you start running into borders with people. But the Atreides expansion, very easy because their starting units are all very, very strong, require very little babysitting. Take down those militia garrisons quite quickly. The Atreides really thrive on aggressive expansion. The Atreides can win a game quite easily without ever leaving their own territory, or at least without ever entering enemy territory. You might have to walk into some neutral territory to annex it early in the game, but if you get some good sieges early on and you get a large bonus to your authority, or if you're taking advantage of some of the discounts that you might get from using peaceful annexation, you can really push and take stuff that other people want to have, and then you sort of dare them to come in and take it back from you. There's a ton, we're going to talk about a lot of this in developments, but there are a lot of defensive-based boosts for the Atreides army. The Atreides army, just flat out on paper, is very strong and very good. And there's a bunch of defensive bonuses on top of being very strong and very good, making it nigh insurmountable, it feels like sometimes. Sometimes you might, if you're another faction and you fight into the Atreides army, you might just hammer at them for what seems like forever. Fights take a long time because they've got a ton of armor and a ton of hit points, and at the end of the fight, you may not have killed a single unit. They're extraordinarily durable and still put out plenty of damage, especially in their own lands. So, for expansion purposes, I like to get right up in people's faces and take land that I know they want and really, really push out into the border regions between you. Try and get the favorable land on your end before the other guys can get there. Because once you've got it, it's much, much harder for them to take it away from you. So I like aggressive, fast expansion. I like leaving a lot of land in my backfield here. We love leaving backfield land for the Atreides, not because we can pillage it, we can't, but we can do almost a bit sort of a quasi-pillage. We'll talk about that later, but you can go out and you can farm XP from the neutral villages. You can go out and fight the militia and then leave without pillaging it because your troops benefit greatly from experience. So you could do a little bit of half pillaging, but mostly the Atreides are playing for a hegemony win condition, hegemony, and having extra lands in your backfield allow you to have that end game boom potential. You start getting close to victory and you could cap all this land you have behind you, and other people can't really do a lot to stop that, and that allows you to really quickly run your score up to victory. Atreides are great at that. One of the hardest in the game to stop from doing that. So in order to keep that empty land behind you, you've got to push your borders right out in other people's faces so you get that good land, that good favorable borders and favorable land. The worst thing that can happen to the Atreides really is being bottlenecked into a small land area and not having land to expand to, because then they're forced to leave their lands and go fight to take other things away. And by leaving their lands to go fight in foreign lands, they're giving up a lot of their advantages that they have on defense. So you want to expand fast if you're the Atreides, and if you're fighting the Atreides, you want to box them in as much as possible. Whew. Young Paul, if we have a young Paul, we need sieges as soon as possible, and we need all of the sieges we can get our hands on. So we put a really high priority on any points of interest we could find that have a reveal a siege. Now we only need 2, maybe 3 of these, but we need them as soon as we possibly can. The faster we get sieges identified, the quicker we start building our relations with them. The quicker we make our alliance with them, the more authority we get to go out and grab more stuff. So we put a really, really high priority in finding sieges and taking land with sieges early in the game. If we've got young Paul. If we don't have young Paul, if we're more of a Thurfer, Jessica maybe, we care a little less about that. We don't have to put so much emphasis on it. But for Paul, it's absolutely critical that you do so. So you want to put a priority on those siege point of views. you want to put a priority on the native customs tech, which makes it 30% cheaper authority to annex a village in a region with a revealed siege. So once you find them, you want to be able to annex those regions. So that early tier 2 green tech is huge for that, making them much, much cheaper. 30% is a huge discount. So we like that fast. We like that fast Paul expansion if we're playing Paul. We already talked about we like to save land in the backfield for hedge farming, for XP booming. That's important. What is the hedge boom? We'll talk about hedge boom later in win conditions, but it's sort of the primary way that we're going to play the Atreides here. There's other ways to do them, but the hedge boom is the principal thing that they are so good at and so hard to stop. And to do that, we need empty territory. So we want to take the territory that other people want, and the territory that is rightfully ours, we're happy to leave empty, and we'll come back and get it later. Of course, we're always putting a priority on trying to grab special regions. Special regions pay out extra hegemony than other regions, and they are critical for housing the craft workshops that we can make from valuable trinkets. Craft workshops are so important for getting that little extra boost into the end game, allowing you to maybe keep up with other people or climb ahead of them in the hegemony race so that you get close enough where you could execute that hedge boom strategy to get to victory. If you don't have special regions and you don't have craft workshops ticking in your favor, then you're forced to be much more aggressive, maybe attacking other people and taking land from them. And we don't necessarily want to do that. We want to grab the good regions. We want 3, 4 would be great, but we want at least 3 as soon as we can get them. The better regions, the better we can do. But special regions, everyone prioritizes special regions, but you really, really do, as the Atreides too. Space and Guild branch is an early good pickup. The Atreides have a relatively unexciting flagship, so it's not a huge priority for us here, but we often have a ton of extra influence that we could easily trade for it. We might be a bit tighter on the spice, or if we've got a good map, we might have a lot of spice, because sometimes the Atreides can do that too. But influence we will always have extra of, and happy to trade that away. Our flagship, the Kraken, is not an exciting one, but it doesn't take up any command points, so we always want it no matter what. Another big thing for the Atreides, and I don't know if I have any options here, the monitoring station is a great option for the Atreides, especially in the border regions. It is theorized, maybe half proved, that the more monitoring stations you have, the more likely you are to identify assassinations earlier in their progress against you. Monitoring stations also show stealth units at very long range, also have a chance to detect operations being used against you, like maybe infiltration cells. Let me tell you, people love to assassinate the Atreides. One, because it's story canonically appropriate and everyone likes that. 2, because it saves you the trouble of having to fight that painful Atreides army in their own lands. So much easier just to kill them in their sleep. So people love to assassinate the Atreides. So the Atreides should love to lean into maybe counter assassination type options like the monitoring stations more than others. Also, the nature of the very large, far-flung empire makes it a little easier to assassinate Atreides because you could have infiltration cells just about everywhere. It's very difficult to search all of your lands in time if you've got a strong assassin neighbor actively working against you. So getting up monitoring stations can help help shore up that weakness for you. Let's see. Monitoring stations. Data centers are also important. Thurfer Howat solves our intel problem a fair bit, but if we're not playing Thurfer, the Atreides can be pretty intel hungry. They've got a fabulous 500 intel option and a pretty strong 100 intel option that then also uses a bunch of other operations at the same time. So especially going into the late game, you're going to want to have a ton of intel to work with. So in order to get that intel, you got to prioritize data centers up on your border regions. And you should have plenty of border regions because, like I said, you're going to be sort of aggressively expanding into other people's faces. So we really like to put a little extra priority on data centers if you can afford them. Listening posts, of course, are great as well if you're doing a little bit more of a political play, but that's not what we're focusing on for this guide, at least. Let's talk developments. Yeah, let's talk developments. Lots to think about here. So I think in general, the generic Atreides plan is not too tech specific. The most specific type build we have is if we're playing our boy Thurfer Hawat, we want a heavy statecraft blue build. If we don't have Thurfer, you can kind of do whatever, and there's not a ton that is super mandatory, except there's always things you're going to want later. At the end game, by the time we get to the end game, we always want we always want our military propaganda, we always want our proud liberator, we always want border defenses by the time we're getting to the end game. And of course, valuable trinkets for those craft shops like we talked about. Those are your critical must-have techs. And border defenses is probably the last one out of all those I pick up, but it's still pretty important. If you've got all of those set up, you're very, very difficult for other people to come and stop. But like I said, if we've got Thurfer, we want a bunch of the blue stuff first. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about our unique techs. I think the very first thing I often start out with is the Atreides sympathizers. And I start out with this because it is a flat +2 influence production, just from researching it. That is wholly unique to the Atreides, and most factions will not get any sort of early influence production. So this has the benefit of immediately pushing you ahead of the pack for at least the very first Landsraad Council. Probably you'll be a bit ahead of it for the first couple Landsraad Councils if you're careful with your spending. But the extra influence, like I said, allows you to have your pick of whatever that first council comes up. Usually it's the likes of, cheaper upkeep or extra money for regions. You get to just pick whatever looks best, and no one else will have enough authority or enough influence to beat you at that point in time. And at that point in time, no one's going to be working together to thwart you, right? It just sort of lets you have your pick of early stuff. The other benefit here is plus Landsraad standing per Landsraad information level when the council opens. This is hugely beneficial. You're not going to take advantage of it early on necessarily. You might sort of early mid, but not right away at the start of the game. At the start of the game, you're still putting all your agents in Arrakis like everybody else. But once you start getting more agents to spare, when you put them into the Landsraad slot and they're generating influence for you, they're also generating standing for you. And Landsraad standing is a key resource for the Atreides. We'll talk a little bit more later, but we love it. Atreides Sympathizers is great. I always start here. Number 2, you could pick up local community for that free Plascrete, but 5 Plascrete's like not that exciting. Maintenance centers, investment offices are great, but I come back and get this later actually. My preferred tech path is sympathizers over to the local dialect to make your first couple annexes cheaper. I come back, I pick up diplomatic maneuvers to get early house gifts, because I like the house gifts for the extra 500 Solari they pay out early on. 500 Solari that you get every 20 days is what? 25 Solari a day. That's not such a bad deal for an early tech to pick up. If you've got Thurfer Hawat and you're getting bonuses for your agents, you really like spying logistics early on for 200% agent recruitment speed. That is a vast increase in the rate at which you will acquire agents, and because your agents are all giving you twice as much stuff from them, we love getting them as quickly as possible. And then what we really like doing is getting sustainable spying, another unique Atreides tech here. This says agents assigned to CHOAM, Landsraad, or Spacing Guild also produce 100% of their associated resources. So all those 3 slots become twice as good, so really beneficial there. And then agent traits present only once on an information field apply their effects twice. And remember, Thurfer is giving us 1 additional trait. So what does that look like? So you get an agent, and you can see an agent normally will have 1 trait, like charismatic, which says information increased by 2% per information level. Well, if we've got our sustainable spying, what it's saying is that if he's the only charismatic guy in this Arrakis slot, then it's not 2% for information level, it's 4% for information level. And then having Thurfer Hawat says he gets another trait. So this guy is an intendant as well. If he's the only intendant here, suddenly it's not paying 20%, it's paying 40%. So the traits get doubled to be twice as good, as long as they're the only ones in that slot. So 2% becoming 4% per information level. We're information level 3. This one agent here is giving us an additional 12% influence production. The next one is giving us extra agent recruitment speeds. I actually have a bunch of guys of all the same trait here, so I haven't been playing my mini game well. But look, the likes of Solari production, an extra 0.5%, which gets doubled to 1% per information level. So we've got 3 information. So this guy here is paying out 3 more information level. If you've got merchant traits on 4 different guys and you have them spread out on each of these, you're making an extra 12% Solari across your whole empire. That alone is a huge benefit. So you can see the little mini game is checking out your agent's traits and making sure they're spread out appropriately. Okay, we've got a charismatic and a recruiter and a merchant here. I need to get like an attendant would be good over there. Maybe we need an engineer in here to spread out the traits, right? So you're trying to make sure you have sort of one of each. Again, back because we've got this sustainable spying. Agent traits present only once on an information level, apply their effects twice. So it's no big deal if you've got stuff doubled up, but when you can spread them out, you're seeing a ton of extra growth and benefit from it. So it's basically Thurfer is doubling the value of your agents, and then sustainable spying is doubling again the total value that you're getting there. So a rush to sustainable spying and then an emphasis on fast agent growth is really, really beneficial. It's really hard to even sort of quantify exactly how much they're doing for you, but take my word for it, it's really, really good. The Thurfer Howat fast sustainable spying is very strong. And then eventually you pick up spying mastery to get even extra agents, minus 50% impact on their recruitment speed. I picked this up when I'm like at 7 or 8 out of 10 agents. You don't need to beeline for it right away. The other thing I tend to beeline for is a quick lay of the land, because you're expanding so rapidly and you're going to have so many different regions. The Atreides oftentimes will have the most different regions in the game, so having an extra half a knowledge per each village is very beneficial, and it unlocks the research agreement treaty, which we mentioned earlier. If you've got Jessica, will become free and you want to try and trade that with everyone possible. In general, research agreements are super good. Even if you don't have Jessica, I think it's worth probably the authority penalty to just get a research agreement with anyone who will take it. And I think if we remember here, research agreement being +2 knowledge and plus 20% research speed for any development that another faction already knows, which will be lots of things. And so extra speed for that will be very, very useful. Research agreements are great, and lay of the land is great too. From there, what do we want? I don't know. From there, we can kind of go wherever we want. I oftentimes like to go up to cultural assimilation for that early expansion. This makes it so our peaceful annexations are even cheaper than our aggressive annexations. They're still going to cost influence, but the authority cost will be cheaper. And authority is typically your bottleneck there. We're making a lot of influence from our Atreides sympathizers, from our extra guys in the Landsrad, so on and so forth. Let's talk other unique stuff. Urban planning is a unique Atreides one that's very valuable. You will always pick this up eventually. This allows you to construct multiple village buildings simultaneously. So what does that look like? That's like you've got stuff you want to build. If you've got the build slots for it, you can come in here, we want to build water, you could open up the next build slot, and simultaneously you could also build a recruitment station. So it's just a really nice quality of life, but if you were to annex something behind enemy lines, you can immediately start building, 2 missile turrets and an airfield and a military base back there. And then if you've got Thurfer Howat, you could speed it up, and before the enemy even realizes that there's green territory in the back of his lands, you could fly your army there and defend it. Being able to build everything at once is a great quality of life and sort of a strategic benefit as well. It's really, really nice. We like it a lot. Other stuff, the Atreides Foreman is maybe their premier economic tech. I oftentimes will not even get it, but if you've got yourself 3, 4, heaven forbid, 5 spice fields, this says after you pay your imperial tax, every harvester with a full crew gets a permanent 15% bonus rate, stacking 3 times. That's pretty good. It's pretty good. If you've got a lot of spice harvesters out there, this can eventually, over a 60-day period, sort of max out to a large income boost. It's slow to build up. I don't put a ton of value on it because it is so slow to sort of pay off, but for an end game, it can power a lot of your economy. An extra 45% is a huge boost for spice harvesting. We like political entente if we're playing Jessica. This says if another faction betrays a truce with you, you get 4 free Landsraad guards. Landsraad guards are fantastic for Atreides. They're extra hard to kill on your own territory, and that's already your thing. It also unlocks your unique council chamber building, which we'll talk a little bit later. And the other interesting thing, active surveillance makes it so guys, you can put, this is your extra guy on counterintelligence to keep from being murdered, and it makes those guys actually do something. Gives you a little bit of influence and intel for them, whereas everybody else's counterintelligence just kind of sit around doing nothing unless they're being assassinated. And the other interesting part is that this is in a different part of the tree than other people's counterintelligence bonuses. So sometimes if you've got a Vernius in the game who is trying to assassinate people, they will obfuscate this tech over here, which is where most people's +1 counterintelligence agent is, but the Atreides one is hidden over here. So if the Vernius is trying to murder people, they would need to be aware that trying to murder the Atreides, it would have to obfuscate something completely different. Just kind of an interesting little thought there. Over in the red stuff, we don't care at all about post-trauma reintegration, cheaper regeneration costs. Doesn't matter at all. We just like the 5 command points. What we do care about, and we care hugely about, is Proud Liberator. So this is the slot where most people get siege incentives to make it better to attack bases. So the Atreides can't do that. They are not good at attacking bases. What they get is 2% health per every 25 Landsraad standing they have. You can cap out at 500 Landsraad standing. Every 100 is paying you out 8% maximum health for your guys. So if you are maxed out at 500 Landsraad standing, all of your military units have 40% more health that nobody else has access to, a buff quite like that. So this necessitates us putting an emphasis on getting a lot of Landsraad standing, hence why we kind of like some of the blue stuff over here, especially the sympathizers, and leaning into that. Hence why we like non-aggression packs with people, making trade deals so those non-aggression packs additionally pay out extra standing each Landsraad council for us. It also incentivizes us to use the, it's not a bazaar, the embassy, which gives us extra Landsraad every time it opens up, because the faster we max out our Landsraad standing, the faster we are maxing out the combat capability of our army. We don't even care about the liberating or annexing a village with less Landsraad standing heals us 20%. Doesn't matter at all. What we care about is 40% more hit points for our troops, which is a huge quantity. The other things we care about deeply are veteran militia, this middle line. Air network makes your shuttles faster and your airfields cheaper. That's cool. We don't care that much though. It's sort of a nice thing to have. But veteran militia, a huge buff to our health and power of our militia, and minus 15% damage received by military units within our borders. This is another premier defensive tech. When you've got this and you're defending your lands, it's so hard to bring down the Atreides military. It's so hard to bring down the Atreides militia. And playing into that, border defenses, which is generally considered by a lot of the top tier players to be borderline overpowered at this point in time. The ability to have a little extra armor. Now this is not unique to the Atreides. Anyone can get border defenses, but it synergizes extra nicely with the Atreides because having an extra missile battery, when guys attack you, your missile batteries are firing the entire time that your militia are defending. And it's so much harder to kill the Atreides militia. It's so much harder to shut down those missile batteries from firing at you. So if you've got twice as many missile batteries, it's twice as much of a problem to get through that really tough, really tanky militia. So it just synergizes hugely with the whole Atreides playstyle, the whole defensive playstyle. Border defenses is probably a must-have tech for the end game Atreides. It makes it so impossibly difficult, especially I don't know if we mentioned earlier, but we're really when we're expanding, we're looking for bunker opportunities. What do I mean by a bunker? I mean villages that have build slots close together. Here we can see these villages have a lot of rock right by each other. So what you could do is you could come in here and you build a missile turret right in between them here, and then over here at their neighbors, we build another missile turret right in between them. So now if anyone comes to attack this village, both of these missile turrets shoot at them. If anyone comes to attack this village, both of these missile turrets shoot at them. If we've got our border defenses up and we build another one here and another one here, suddenly anyone attacking any one of these villages is getting shot at by 4 missile turrets at the same time. And I can tell you, 4 missile turrets is basically unbeatable if there's any sort of defensive force. Missiles do, AoE damage. They're hard to shut down. A missile turret has like 1,000 health and like 10 armor. It's really difficult to kill quickly. 4 of them together and close like this basically makes this area unbreakable, an unbreakable bunker, as it were. Sometimes you can get really lucky. You could see maybe even 3 different territories that all have close building slots together. Of special note, if you can ever get stuff near, if you can ever find the middle, the polar sink that is close to another village, or Praise Muad'Dib close to 2 other villages, and you could have 3 building slots of missile turrets close together. It is just this unbreakable citadel of defenses. It's really, really powerful, and becomes twice as powerful if you get up to border defenses. So our end game, we really want Proud Liberator to make our troops super strong. We really want border defenses to make our defenses unbreachable, and of course valuable trinkets, which is the same as anyone else can get for the most part, because we want to have craft workshops giving us that passive daily hegemony, so that it's getting us closer to the point where we could hedge boom on to victory. If you're not playing Thurfer, you can kind of ignore a lot of that blue stuff. Maybe you don't need to go into sustainable spying and spying mastery. I will say, if you're playing Paul though, you do need, when you make alliances with Sieches, you do need to send one of your agents in there to be an emissary, which takes him out of your agent pool. So if I'm playing Paul, I do still like to get up at least to spying logistics, because otherwise I often find myself with just not enough agents to do things. You put some guys in counterintelligence so you don't get assassinated. You put some guys in your Sieches to make alliances, and then you don't have anyone to even put in your normal stuff. So the emphasis, especially if you're making those siege alliances, is a little faster agent recruitment. I like that too. I oftentimes will not get very much yellow stuff at all till later in the game. A lot of people will beeline for yellow stuff on other factions, which if you can get, like we talked about earlier, that research agreement, you can come back and pick it up later, sort of on the cheap almost. If you can make friends with Vernius, Vernius will probably give you a lot of this stuff for free for some time at least. And we're not playing a chome lifestyle here. We're just trying to get the bills paid, and the bills are usually not that bad for the Atreides. So I often find I like a strong emphasis on the blue stuff. If I'm Thurfer, we always put a strong emphasis on the green stuff for our expansion and our defense. And every faction in the game puts a strong emphasis on getting up this third tier towards military propaganda to make sure you've got the command points to at least contest a strong fight against the enemy. That's our development talk. Of note, because the Atreides foremen are pretty good, if you're in a lobby where you've got a chome contender like a Harkonnens or a Smugglers, and you expect them to be buying up a lot of chome shares, and maybe it's a poor lobby with other people who are not traditionally rich, maybe think the Ekaz, maybe the Fremen, guys who are unlikely to be trying to contest, maybe then it's okay to switch your build up and try to rush for an Atreides foreman, because you want to be able to, if someone's trying for a chome win, you need to be making some sort of money so that you can also be buying shares, not because you're trying to win, but because buying shares is the only way to slow down a chome win. And it's everyone's job to buy shares if someone is choming real hard, and the only way you could do that is by leaning into a little more yellow stuff than you might otherwise want. So you got to kind of play your lobby. Let's talk main base buildings. We already talked about an early love for the embassy. Plus Landsraad, we're probably going to get this every time because we want as much Landsraad standing as quickly as possible. We are especially going to get this if we can convince anybody into taking those early treaties that we talked about, because the benefit here of a treaty having at least one treaty contracted with another faction grants a production bonus of 10% of its associated resource. What that means is if we have a trade agreement with the ECAS and we have that council chamber up, it's not giving us plus 3% Solari production, it's giving us plus 13% Solari production. Because of that plus 10%. So that is 13 instead of 3 is a massive difference. So if we get treaties up with anyone else, we beeline for an embassy as soon as we can possibly do it. It gives you 10% more research if you've got research agreements up. It gives you 10% more influence if you've got political agreements up. And we were going to build it anyways for the Landsraad standing, so even more emphasis to make some treaties with people. If you've got Thurfer, and even in general, we're pretty happy to have an intelligence agency. It's not necessarily the first thing we get up because it's a little deeper in the tree, but we love an intelligence agency. More agents, like we talked about. We want agents as quickly as possible. More operations slots. We kind of like a lot of operations slots, and we'll talk about those maybe next year. I always start off with an administrative hall. Same as with most factions, the plus 30% authority production is just too good to pass up. We get an administration hall as soon as possible to power through that early game expansion. In theory, you could get rid of this later in the game for something else if you start capping out without anything to use it on, but because of the likes of our peaceful annex being able to sort of grab stuff around the map, it's still often useful deep into the end game for us. My typical build is always going to have 3 red, 2 red. I don't see any reason to ever really abandon those powerful military bonuses, extra armor, extra health, making our hard to kill army even harder to kill. Just lean into it, just go all the way, turn it up to 11. That gives us precious few other slots to work with. And like I said, because we're not playing a particularly economic focused build here, we are probably going to just sort of squeeze in some extra yellow buildings wherever we could find them. I oftentimes will start out with a fast research center. Everybody likes a quick research center for that big knowledge boost early on and the extra hegemony gains from early spice taxes and any other sort of early income. You always got to be careful with the research center because it inflates your hegemony so much it'll make you look like you're maybe further ahead than you would otherwise be. So if you get up to the 20k level where you're about to pop up on the scoreboard as a threat to hegemony, you do want to come in here and break down your research center and replace it with something else, like an intelligence agency or maybe a Landsraad quarters if you're trying for more political offices. And then later on you might come back and build it again as part of your hedge boom. But I start with an administrative hall. I often will go 2 blue. I'll fill in maybe 2 yellows, maybe another blue in here if I feel like it, and then 3 red, 2 red. Build all the red buildings, starting with probably a command post as soon as you can get that. Yeah, that's about all we care about. That's about all. The unique building is the council chamber, which makes it so that if you spend your votes and influence on something and that thing does not pass, it fails, you get half of those back as influence, which is kind of neat for political play, but I find political play in the current meta, the current patch, to be not particularly impactful. That could always change in the future. Maybe we'll have a strong Landsraad gameplay coming up in a future patch. Who knows? But right now, I don't find a lot of use for this. It's kind of fun. It's kind of neat, but it doesn't warrant a slot in my builds. Let's talk. We did main base buildings. Let's talk Chapter 4, First Battle. Let's talk operations. The Atreides unique operations are some hits and misses. Of middling, maybe on the good end of things, is support intelligence for 100 intel. Any operations launched in a zone apply minus 5% damage received to ally units. So you use this on any zone that you've got your military units in, and they take... Does it show us here? So if I click on a guy... support intelligence, minus 5% received. So then, if we put scav teams in here, Support intelligence, -5 received times 2. Maybe we put a leave order in here. -5 received times 3. And so this is also not just the operations that you use, but it's also the operations that enemies use. So if the Harkonnens roll in and they throw down combat drugs and their own scav team and their own, hidden sleeper agents, and suddenly there's 6 operations in effect here, well, your support intelligence is now giving you 30% less damage received for your whole army, which is really, really strong. So we love support intelligence. We keep this prepped all the time, and it's another reason why we like that intelligence agency as well, giving us access to more slots to be able to fill up here. Oftentimes, it's sort of tough to figure out what else to use with it. If you're going to get in a fight, scav team is always a good idea. Get a little extra money for the fighting. If I don't have a good other option, I will even default to leave order often, which is very rarely used because it's so easy to counterplay around, but it's so cheap at 100 intel just to get -5% damage taken on top. I prep up a leave order and toss it into fights all the time with the Atreides. The other ones we've got are our 200 level intel is Arrakis Diplomacy. Disband all rebellions and raids and plus 200% relation gain and resources received from trade with a siege. This is mostly terrible. I would say never use this. Even the gain and the rebellions is no big deal. The raids is rarely a big deal. The relational gain, this only lasts for about 3 days, so it's about 3 days of faster gain. It nets out to like plus 10 more relation than you would otherwise have. It does triple, the trade that you're getting. So if you're trading for 10 spice in here, I think it should. So we're trading for 10 spice. If we pop it in here for 3 days, okay, it's doubled then. For 3 days, we're trading at 20 spice. Not that big a deal. So it pays us out an extra 30 spice over those days, right? For 200 intel, that's not it's not a win in my book. I never prepare Arrakis Diplomacy. I use other stuff. Other stuff like ceasefire, the cherry on top of the Atreides screw you for attacking me pie is ceasefire. Interrupts and prevents battles. You use ceasefire and nobody can fight in this area. Puts up a big shield here, lasts for 3 days, and while the ceasefire is up, there can be no combat in this entire region at all from anyone. Incredibly strong as a defensive thing. You can do really cheeky things. You can pop out into the adjacent region, and you could fight other guys in this adjacent region, and you could run guys back into the ceasefire region if they're getting focused, and then they can't be shot again. You can march on an enemy, and maybe he's about to cross a region. Maybe you engage him right at the border. You could ceasefire the region behind him, and suddenly all his range units can't shoot you, but you're still fighting all of his melee units in the front. The enemy could be coming to base kill you, and you could ceasefire them, and now they all just sit there, and they can't base kill you. Guess how long it takes to prepare a new ceasefire? It takes about 3 days. You know how long a ceasefire lasts? About 3 days. So if you've got a lot of intel, you can ceasefire, and then prep another ceasefire. If you've got Thurfer Hawat, you can click on this to hasten it and make it go even faster. You can chain ceasefires to an obnoxious degree. Now, obviously, they're super expensive at 500 intel apiece, so you would need an outrageous amount of intel to sustain more than 2 or 3 ceasefires. But you can get an awful lot of intel. Ceasefire, as soon as that ceasefire goes down, you can start prepping the next one. We could even hasten it again. Our hastened one, I think, might be done even before the ceasefire elapses here. So this land is ceasefired. We've got another one coming up. It'll be done in 1 day. This ceasefire is still ready. Can we overlap them? I've never even tried. Oh no, we can't use it because it's still it has an internal timer actually. We can't use it while the other one's out. But as soon as this is done, we can ceasefire again. So you could, in theory, even if you have no income and you've got 1,000 saved up, and one on hand. You could ceasefire, prep another one, ceasefire, prep another one, ceasefire. You could lock everyone out for 9 days at least. You could even build in a little buffer time in between there. That's 9 days if they're trying to kill your base, the 9 days that they're losing supply, 9 days that maybe your governor, victory is ticking down, 9 days that you've got to peaceful annex other territory that can help you win the game. It's just a wildly powerful ability. You should be very aware that if you are playing against the smugglers, the smuggler ability, their 500 intel ability cancels all other operations. So if you smugly ceasefire something and the smugglers are prepared for you, they could smugly cancel your ceasefire and continue with the murdering. Keep that in the back of your mind. Smugglers, nobody likes them. Let's talk units. The cliff notes on the units is that everyone's good. We like them all. Troopers come out quite tough. They are actually a 5 CP unit, while troopers for everybody else in the game, their mainline base level infantry, are a 4 CP unit. But that's because they come out quite a bit tougher. They have elevated hit points, elevated armor and power. They're just a little, actually their power is a little light, but their hit points and their armor are huge, and they only go up over time. Troopers are very strong, very solid tanky unit that then get a little extra power if they're buffed by another unit, which is going to be pretty common here. The basic ranged unit, their rangers, are a really powerful ranged unit. Their ability to suppressive fire is no big deal, especially because it doesn't stack. We're happy to have guys take 10% less damage, but that's not why we use them. We use them mostly because they are a very solid DPS. They've got a good power, a good attack speed, so they are just strong ranged DPS. And then with all of our buffs to armor, all of our buffs to health, they could be an astonishingly durable range DPS. While snipers oftentimes may go the whole game at like 300, maybe 400 hit points, you can see my ranger here is at 740 hit points. So maybe he hits a little less hard than a sniper, but he's more than twice as durable, way tougher for enemy flankers to run around and bring down quickly. Rangers are strong because they're so hard to kill, they can stay alive and keep dealing that DPS, while other range units might fade away really quickly if you can get on top of them. We like heavy weapon squads. Their -2 armor is a great buff. Reducing armor can be a huge damage multiplier. It only stacks once, so it's not that beneficial to have tons of them. Typically we build 1 or 2, or there is even they do a pretty decent DPS. They have an extremely high power, relatively low attack speed. So you could bypass your rangers and just make a ton of heavy weapons guys, and they will do perfectly well as your ranged DPS component. Our special unit, our elites, are not fighters, but they are yet again tank guys. Our wardens, their benefit here is hugely impactful. All other ally military units at short range, you can mouse over this, you see a little circle around them. All other units in that little circle around them here get +2 armor, and that's a lot. Your main base building of 2 districts is +1 armor, so just being near a ranger is +2 armor. It's a huge health bonus for your army. In addition, they have a fantastic armory upgrade that I'll show you in a second. So we like probably just like 2 rangers in our army. They're our most expensive unit. They're okay. They're average DPS, but they're not our DPS unit. I believe they're 5 CP as well. Yeah. So they're hard to kill. They're good tankies. They're not killy units at all. So we get just like 2 of them in order to make sure we've got that aura around, and that aura can't easily be sniped by our enemies. Finally, we really like our support drones. Drones are sort of hit and miss for a lot of factions, but the Atreides ones are great right now. Support drones, they don't do much damage. They have an interesting buff from their armory, which I'll show you in a second, but they're somewhat low hit points, but high armor, so the enemy could pick them off, so you gotta keep an eye on them, try to keep them safe if possible. What the support drones do is they have this long range bubble, not like the short range bubble on the Warden, but anything in this long range bubble that dies, excuse me, automatically gets sucked up inside of the support drone. I wonder if anyone here will die. Probably not. But if someone were to die, the support drone sucks them up and they go inside, and they start off default holding 2, and you could even upgrade that to 3 capacity. Here, we'll let this heavy weapons guy die here. No, never mind, they're all walking away. Who knows what these guys are doing. So if one of your super tough, super valuable Atreides troopers is about to die, before they die, the support drone automatically sucks them up and puts them inside of them. And then you could load the support drone into the Kraken, where he will be perfectly safe because the Kraken is a transport. You could take the support drone when it's loaded full of guys and just head back home, wheel those guys back to safety like an ambulance, right? So this is one of the main reasons why it's so hard to kill Atreides armies, and they oftentimes will level up and get really great experience points bonuses, because the support drones are super, super strong at keeping them alive. Just 2 drones with upgraded to 3 capacity means they could hold 6 guys. Well, your entire army is only, I don't know, 6, 7, 10, 11, 12. It was only like 12 infantry, so you could hold half the army in your ambulances. So, if you suffer up to 50% casualties in a fight, it's possible no one died at all, and the support drones will spit them all back out to heal up back at town, right? I like 2 support drones. You could drop 1 support drone and 1 trooper, which would then let you fit in 2 additional rangers or 2 additional heavy weapon squads for a little extra DPS, but I find the tankier, enduring style works better. I like 4 troopers, 4 rangers, 2 heavy weapons, 2 support drones, 2 wardens. That's my preferred composition there. Kraken, like we talked about earlier, not very exciting, has a relatively average or weak attack. It's kind of hard to shoot down. It can load up to 10 units and fly them around as a transport. That's rarely useful. Sometimes you can get a little bit of use out of it. It moves so slowly. It's not like it's a super rapid transport, right? It would be fun if it was fast to load it up and go and do like a base drop on someone, but it's so slow it can't do that. The best use case of your Kraken, again, is if someone's about to die, you just run them over, you click on the Kraken, and they'll jump into it instantly. So, this guy is down to 5% health. Oop, he jumped into the Kraken. Now the Kraken is this super tanky, invincible ambulance, again, to keep your guys alive. Why do we like keeping our guys alive? Well, because if we look at heroes, we are Gurney Halleck enjoyers. Everyone likes Duncan Idaho, but Duncan Idaho is pretty bad. Gurney Halleck, on the other hand, is awesome. And he says units gain +1 armor per experience level after the first. And then all ally military units at long range gain even extra experience, and whoever Gurney's fighting does less damage. And he also has an ability to force march, making people run faster, but mostly this exemplar teacher ability. So our units are hard to kill, so they get lots of experience, and then Gurney says them having lots of experience gives them even additional benefits above and beyond what their experience levels would normally give them. So again, just leaning into those defensive benefits, just stacking them on. Duncan Idaho is the more aggressive choice, but he's quite bad. For each allied bonus gains heroism, meaning attacks of allied units at short range deal extra damage. Upon death, all future Golas become a little bit stronger, and he can go into a berserk rage where he becomes very strong attacker. Hard to kill, moves really fast, has high attack speed. But because it's a berserk rage and you can't control him, if you berserk Duncan and he's attacking an enemy unit, the enemy can just walk away and it drags Duncan off into the distance with him, so he can get separated from the army and killed really easily. He just doesn't offer any of these sort of stacking bonuses that we love, that Gurney can do so much with. Gurney, in addition, has this forced march, which is just sort of this toggleable ability that lets your units all run really fast. They can't fight while they're doing it, but it just opens up extra opportunities. Run faster to cross a desert before the worms get you. Run faster to reach different parts of your empire that are under attack. Run faster to retreat because it looks like you've been lured into a trap and you need to get out of there. It's a really situational but oftentimes very useful ability. We pick Gurney Halleck 100% of the time for our armies. Let's talk armory upgrades. Not a lot of unique or interesting choices here. In this game, actually, Vernius has obfuscated the first armory tech for whatever reason. It's an AI Vernius, so it's a little harder to see exactly what we're picking. I typically like for the troopers, you could pick pairing arm guards to give them a little less damage received in melee, but I oftentimes will take frontline tactics where they hand out armor to all of the other units at close range because we like even more armor. Offensive mindset for +4 power that requires 1 more command point. I typically don't like this in an end game situation. However, in an early game skirmishing kind of scenario, it's super powerful. If you're fighting with people and you've only got like 4 units and they've only got 4 units, if you pick up offensive mindset, it makes your troopers just total badasses that are high DPS and really hard to kill. I feel like it doesn't pay for itself once you're getting to your command point maxes. You know, once you're up to 40 out of 40 or 65 out of 65, I would drop this and pick up something else. I typically like frontline tactics, and I often get, well, the Prana Bindu initiation. So experience levels give you extra health, which is good for everything I've told you so far already. Likewise, we pick up the long rifle for extra attack range on the ranger. I kind of skip this. I don't want to lose more attack speed on my DPS unit, even though it's buffing damage done. And I kind of skip this because I don't want to lose power on my somewhat lower power unit to begin with. Even with an attack speed bonus, losing power makes you a lot more susceptible to other high armor units. So I often will take a long rifle, and I take war memoirs for more power for experience level. On our heavy weapons squad, if I'm only making a couple heavy weapon squad guys, I'm using them for their debuffs, and I'm using them for their distracting flashes. Minus 20% damage received to allied units at close range. So these guys are sort of a close range damage resistance for all your other units. So you want these guys, you know, neck and neck with your troopers and your wardens, making them even tankier. And then we pick 2 of them so that, again, it's hard to get that buff off of us. If for some reason there was a large enemy air force, you could take Distortion Umbrella to reduce damage from air units, but that's very rare. Heavy loads I would take maybe if I was having them be more of a range DPS, in which case they could do a really strong sort of alpha strike and blow targets away with their huge attack power. But typically I take Distracting Flashes and War Memoirs for more power on experience level. Support drones we talked about a little bit. I love the optimized bed arrangement for an extra carry capacity. I don't mind at all that it's extra fuel cells. And I also quite like supporting field. If the drone's not full, it's lowering all of your guys' armor by 2, but buffing all of your power by 2. You've got a lot of armor. You could kind of let some of that armor go for +2 power. +2 power is a pretty good buff, and then as soon as you need your guys tankier because you've started to take some casualties, that armor kicks back in again. You know, once that drone gets full, you lose that -2 armor debuff and get it back. So I often will take that. The other one, the Kraken protocols, makes it somewhat of a fighter. Your support drone gives a little extra power, and then when he starts grabbing guys, he gets extra armor, so he's harder to kill. That's useful. I could see maybe if you didn't want to go for supporting field, you could go for Kraken protocols. Likewise, the evasion booster means when it's full, it goes super fast. That's also very funny. I think all that's viable. I always take optimized bed arrangements, and I always take supporting field, but if you wanted to take the others instead of supporting field, I think that's fine. I think optimized bed arrangements is the best one though. Finally, for the Warden, we have a very unique last stand protocols. I don't think any other elite units in the game actually get an activatable ability like this. This is a button that you get on your Wardens. So you get this, and your Warden now has an ability, which of course doesn't have a hotkey, so you'll have to click on it. So oftentimes I put my Wardens on their own hotkey, and you can't turn it on unless they're in a fight. But as soon as you get in a fight, you pop this, and your Warden becomes +5 armor, up to 16 armor. What an outrageous amount of armor. 16 armor means most units in the game will probably hit him for only like 1 damage, unless they're super high power dedicated anti-armor units. So again, this doesn't work out of combat, so you kind of got to wait till they're in the mix with enemies. But what I love to double click my Wardens, walk them in front of my army, As soon as they get in the fight, I pop their last stand, which slows them down, but who cares? They no longer get ally buffs, but that's not too impactful. Just having the massive armor boost alone is so much survivability for them. Unless the enemy is conscious about microing their army to not be attacking the wardens can soak up an absurd amount of damage. And then if they die, they pop inside of your support drones, right? Magical. The other thing I like for a warden, I get last stand protocols 100% of the time. The other thing I like is maybe Pranu Bindu initiation for more health, maybe minus damage received in melee. I don't often like cover tactics. It means if you have guys, your own guys around them that are trying to like run away from the enemy, they'd run a little faster, but I don't know, it doesn't feel impactful to me. I pick last stand protocols and I pick Pranu Bindu initiation for more experience on health. Again, leaning into having an elite army by keeping them alive and getting their experience levels up as high as possible. We talked composition. This is the composition I like. I rarely vary it up. I think this works really well against just about anything. If the enemy is super diligent about getting onto your ranged units and killing them, maybe you take less rangers and you take more troopers, and you just stand there and wither and endure that enemy fire forever, because they're going to have a really hard time wearing you down. Let's see. Chapter 5, The Beast Titan. Let's talk end game win conditions, and let's be honest, you're going for hegemony. You could go for governorship, but if the other people want to stop you from governorship, that's relatively easy to do. If other people want to stop you from hegemony, that's going to be quite a bit more work for them. Let's talk about what a hedge boom is. We mentioned it before. If you're not familiar with the hedge boom, so the hedge boom is you get to the end game, you're at 24, 23, 24, 25K or so, which means, you know, you win the game at 30K. If you're at 24, you're getting kind of danger close, and people are probably going to want to stop you if you're in the lead. What you do is you go into your main base, you wait for some fortuitous timing, like maybe 7 days before an Imperial spice tax. And then we come in here and we turn off our embassy, and you start building our research center, which will be done in 8 days. So, you know, ideally you start this 8 days away from the Imperial tax, but that's fine. We'll do it anyways. You start building your research center. After a couple days have gone by, maybe when you've got 5 days left, you go over and you start to peacefully annex some territory. And ideally, you've got all this set to hit right at the same time. 6 days left here, 5 days left here. Okay, so we'll peacefully annex here. And we'll if we've got, it's going to ruin my example because there's renegade bases in all of these villages. So you start peacefully annexing a bunch of territory, and you have it all timed out so that you're going to pay your spice tax, you're going to finish your research center, and your peaceful annexes are all going to finish at the same time as well. And you can, you know, your peaceful annex takes 5 days, it takes 8 days to build your research center, and you can always see when the tax is going to come. Of course, paying your tax pays out 1,000 hegemony as well, or 1150 if you've got your research center built ahead of time. Be aware that if you have land you want to be able to peacefully annex, you cannot peacefully annex it if it has a renegade base on it, so keep those renegades cleared off of your backfield. Let's see what we get here. So we are currently at 26K in the hegemony meter. As soon as we finish the research center, it pays out plus 15% hegemony for all of our current controlled regions. We currently control 13 regions and 3 special regions for 10,800 hegemony. The second we finished our research center, we get 15% more from those regions. So that's going to be an extra almost 2,000 instant hegemony we get from building our research center. We're going to get an extra 1,000 from paying our tax. We're going to get 2,000 for building our research center. We're about to peacefully annex at least 2 regions. That's going to give us another 1,200 plus. We're gonna probably could get a third region if we had them cleared of renegades, which would be another 700-ish after our research center. So what you do is you time all these things to happen at the same time. Boom, we pay our tax. Boom, we finish our peaceful annex. Boom, we finish our research center. Almost. 29.5, and then we just wait the last day for this other peaceful annex to tick through. We can even start another one over here. And if these didn't have renegade bases on it, we wouldn't even have to move our men. We don't even need to attack these regions. We can peacefully annex them, which no other people can see happening. We see the progress bar. No one else has any indication that we're peacefully annexing something. So as soon as you get to 25 or so, you can do that boom where you grab everything and you have it all timed to hit at the same point in time. So you jump from danger territory where people are thinking they might have to deal with you all the way up to, oops, I already won the game. That's what the hedge boom is. And a lot of factions try to do a hedge boom, but nobody can do it as well as the Atreides because of the peaceful annex. Anyone else that wants to do a hedge boom has to physically grab their troops, and they have to walk to each village, and they have to defeat the militia, and they have to start annexing. And anytime a village is being annexed anywhere on the map, even if it's in the fog of war, you could see the siege symbol over it. You could see someone, you could be, oh, you know, Ekaz is hedge boom, and I see them starting to take their land. You can't even see the Atreides do that. So extra sneaky. The likes of peaceful annex is 20% cheaper from cultural assimilation, so it's even cheaper to do that for the Atreides using the peaceful annex than it is for most other people. The likes of having a ton of authority. Maybe at this point, if we had Paul, we'd be at plus 20 authority. We could peaceful annex a couple things, and before long, we could even peaceful annex one more if we needed it, right? That hedge boom is so powerful for the Atreides, and it's so hard for other people to stop. And again, our army doesn't have to do it. Our army could be at the front lines defending our territory or invading someone else's territory who they think they're about to win, but at the same time, we're launching our own hedge boom without having to withdraw our troops to do so. So that peaceful annex really pays off at the end, showing its power if you've prepared properly for it by keeping stuff available. And of course, if you could have some of these unclaimed territories be maybe a special region, well, that's suddenly 2 or 3 times as good. A special region pays out as about 3 normal regions worth of hegemony. So if you keep a special in your back pocket that is uncontrolled, it makes your potential hedge boom that much larger. Now, skilled players will identify that and say, you know, Atreides have a special region in their backfield. We should just go kill them. But less skilled players won't understand the danger that poses. What other wind cons could we think about? You could absolutely push a fast governorship win. That usually entails getting as much Landsraad standing as quickly as possible and as much influence as quickly as possible. And then because you can come up for charters so much quicker than other people, you can grab Speaker of the Council relatively quickly, which makes governorship a very strong likelihood if you're able to beat the lobby to it. You know, I've seen governor wins in month, I don't know about 4, but definitely in month 5, which is quite early. And you need to do it early because the longer the game goes, the more likely folks are to invest in their own influence gain and be able to band together to muscle you out of important positions. But if you go super fast, you might be able to do it for the Atreides. I still think a competent lobby can stifle that no matter what. Even if you're Speaker of the Council and you win Dune governorship, the other players could still support the governor charter to come up again to vote you out of it on the subsequent vote, assuming everyone together is making enough influence to beat the influence that you're making. I think it takes a relatively clueless lobby to lose that, but that happens still in a lot of lobbies. So let me say, governor is perfectly viable, but unlikely in a very capable game. Could you go kill other people's bases? Probably not. You could if they were really terrible and you were totally overpowering them, but because you lack siege incentives, because you're not a particularly high DPS type army, It's really tough to crack bases with the Atreides, so I wouldn't even try it for the most part. You're a pretty lousy assassin as well. Active surveillance is taking up the spot which has the cheaper assassination tech, and as well as, I think, sustainable spying is taking up the spot that gives you an extra infiltration cell. So your assassins don't get any cheaper. They're always going to cost 200 intel to make, which is expensive, and you don't get any extra infiltration cells. You could only ever put 2 infiltration cells on someone. So assassination is a tall order for the Atreides. They are not particularly good at doing it. Could you Chom boom? Could you boom your economy to buy all the Chom shares? Theoretically, in a very ideal scenario where you've got maybe 5 spice fields and you've gone quickly into the Atreides foreman, you could boom an outrageously high amount of spice doing so and make a lot of money doing that. And if other people are not making a lot of money, you maybe could use your defensive bonuses to protect yourself enough to get an awful lot of Chom. Can you get all the way up to 50%? Maybe. Maybe. Anything's possible, but I wouldn't plan on it. Atreides are not a notorious Choming faction. I think the Harkonnens are better at it. I think the Smugglers are better at it. I think Corrino's better at it. But maybe Atreides are then 4th in line, somewhere around there, maybe 5th in line, somewhere around there. They're not particularly good at it. You're going to try and win on hedge, and if you're not going to win on hedge, then you got some deep thinking you're going to have to do. Chapter 6, Squad Levi. Let's talk tips and tricks. We're coming to the end of our Atreides guide here. You know everything you need to know at this point, but maybe there's a couple extra things to think about. We mentioned it earlier. I'm going to mention it again. If you think you've got a friendly lobby, fast teching into the early treaties is super powerful. The treaties are lay of the land for research agreement, urban planning for trade agreement. The tech one is in diplomatic maneuvers, but we don't even particularly care about the political one. We care deeply about research and trade agreements. I would say if you think people will take those deals and you've got maybe Jessica who makes them cost no authority upkeep, I would rush them as quickly as possible. They could be a huge, huge benefit. If you manage to like make non-aggression pact the whole lobby and trade treaties with them, it is like you're just set for the game. By the time they realize the danger that they're in, you will be cackling off into the sunset. The Atreides economy suffers a lot early on and does much better later on once they're able to get things sort of going and established. But if you've got a couple of trade treaties up, maybe you've got the, not the research center, but the embassy that gives you a bonus to those treaties. Fast trade treaties is a super strong play if people will accept it. Jessica, a cheeky little thing to do. Maybe you, for some reason, have decided to assassinate someone and they have declared war on you so that they can use their forward monitoring stations to see your assassins incoming and kill them. You could use Jessica to force a truce on someone, and now they can no longer kill the assassins walking in to murder them, even if they can see them. A very unique edge case, but a funny one if it comes up. With the double ability from sustainable spying, agent traits present only once on an information field affect their effects or apply their effects twice. If you get I don't think I have any examples here, but if you get a Bene Gesserit agent, the Bene Gesserit agent says it counts twice as much for getting information levels. Well, it counts twice as much as that if you've got an Atreides Bene Gesserit. So Bene Gesserit could instantly max out, not instantly, but eventually max out any thing to a level 3 information level. You could put a single Bene Gesserit on another player and it'll get up to level 3, which is all you need to assassinate them, funny enough. Because so many of these abilities work off of, so many of the good traits you're getting for your agents work off of how, like, maximum information level bonuses. A Bene Gesserit allows you to get up to maximum information level really easily. Because the Atreides sympathizer pays out extra Landsrad standing per Landsrad information level. If you get one Bene Gesserit relatively early in the game, boom, you pop her in the Landsrad all by herself. She will max out the level and max out your Landsrad standing very quickly. So we love, love, love Bene Gesserits as the Atreides. They're super, super useful. They allow us to do a lot of cool stuff. We love anything that gives us extra agents, right? Actually, if you can get a hold of the Eyes of the Council, it's really great. It's really lucrative. If you can get extra Fremen sibling agents from doing missions or allying sieges, any extra agents are good. We love agents as the Atreides. What's next? If you have a drone that is holding 3 wounded soldiers, I don't have an example here because none of my guys are wounded. If you've got a drone and you load your drone up into the Kraken, it only takes up 1 carrying capacity, not the 3 or 4 that you might think it might. So you could do a little bit of inception here. Your drone with 3 guys loaded into it can be loaded into the Kraken, and it only takes up 1 space. Almost a little piece of trivia there. Backfield annexation is always hilarious. So the enemies, most enemies will try to be saving their own territory. Now you can't do anything about the ECAS ones because the ECAS ones are likely to be sanctuaries, and sanctuaries you cannot annex from them. But lots of other types of people will save their own backfield territory because they would love to be able to do their own sort of hedge booms. Well, the Atreides can just come over and start peacefully annexing the backfield territory. If you backfield annex something from another player, like again, using the power of your urban planning to mass build all of your buildings in really quickly, using your air network to shuttles that fly 100% faster and cheaper airfields, you could super fast rush an airfield up and fly your army there, and suddenly it's like this huge base in the back of the enemy's territory, and they've got to fight your army to get off of it maybe. It's so funny and so effective, actually. It's a really, really great thing to do to screw with people. And honestly, if you lose it, it's not that big of a deal. You know, you don't want to throw your army away if you could avoid it, but even if you do, you can come back from that if you're not getting pressured too much. And it's so much trouble for other people to deal with. And then on top of it, the extra salt in the wounds, Atreides villages cost more authority to annex, and they cost 10% longer to liberate. So the enemy has to spend extra time or extra authority to get that territory back from you. So you can use this a couple interesting ways. You can do it just to mess with people and grab extra authority, or not. You can just grab extra regions that will be hard for them to deal with. You can use this to distract people. Maybe you want to fight the Harkonnens. Well, you can grab the territory in the back of their lands, causing them to move their forces back there to fight for it, and then you attack the front lines, or you attack the front lines and then you annex in the back so that you could get that land all built up while their armies, like, they're not even looking at it. There's a lot of fun things you could do. It really draws people attention. It's very, very frustrating to deal with. The Atreides work really well against the smugglers because the smugglers are likely to leave so much empty territory around them for pillaging and things like that. Also, of really interesting importance, I believe the peaceful annexation even works on freshly pillaged territory while no one else could annex it. If someone walks into the middle and pillages the polar sink, well, it gets that devastated debuff on it where, I don't remember the exact time, maybe like 10 days or something, no one can try to annex this territory, except the Atreides, who can immediately begin peaceful annexing it. It's really, really annoying for the smugglers or the Harkonnens or whoever in their backfield territory they're trying to use to pillage while the Atreides start peaceful annexing it. Use it all the time to grab stuff that you ought not to have. I mean, don't do that until you've already sort of established your borders and gotten the land that you actually want, but use it to mess with other people in sort of the mid to late game. It's really fun and really effective. Fremen are notorious bullies, but they struggle versus the Atreides more than you might expect, and largely that's because the Fremen DPS is mostly melee based, and our defensive turrets that we're building, our missile batteries, really punish, blobbed up melee forces, and they're going to need to blob up to fight against our super tough militia, and then our missile turrets can really punish those melee blobs. And a lot of the Fremen armies are known for their high damage output, but not necessarily for their high health. A couple missile turrets firing at their Fedaykin can really, really kill them or damage them or weaken them a lot. So Fremen struggle more than you might expect. Even though they've got some decent armor penetration in the Fedaykin, they still struggle a lot fighting against the Atreides, and the reason largely for that is the durability of the militia and the AoE power of missile batteries. So lean into extra missile batteries even more than you might otherwise do so if you're playing against the Fremen. The Atreides, like we said, are bad at assassination, but you can actually do it really quickly with Thurfer. You're already going to be way down this blue tree. You're already going to be having lots and lots of agents. You're going to have lots of incentives to put agents on people, and maybe and likely to have, because you're getting so many agents and because they're so effective at getting extra data when they're on other people, and you'll probably have a lot of intel, you could rush a very quick 2-cell assassination on someone. I've seen it work, and it absolutely could work. It is not the most efficient assassination in the world, but nobody will be expecting the Atreides to do it. And it's very funny if it actually works. And worst case scenario, an assassination, typically, especially an unexpected one, will cause, if someone's willing to abandon territory, they can almost always stop the assassination. But, hey, in the process, they abandon territory that you can then immediately start peaceful annexing from them, which is so troll and so funny. So don't assassinate with the Atreides unless you really want to, and then it's kind of funny. But you got to do it super quick. A late game assassination won't work. It'll only work if you try to do it super quick with Thurfer. We already talked about Atreides liking extra plus experience gain. So one quirk you could keep in mind is the Way of the Desert quirk, plus extra experience gain for all military units. If you've got any of those, consider an investment office to double it, making it 40% extra experience gain for your military units, on top of the 50% that you're already getting from Gurney to power through those levels for your units. That can be pretty useful. Know that if someone breaks a treaty with you, there is a 10-day window where you cannot sign a peace treaty with them again, and where you cannot have Jessica force them to sign a peace treaty with them. It looks like this. If we've broken our non-aggression pact with the Fremen, war was declared recently 10 days before you can offer a truce or force a truce. So if someone breaks a treaty with you, they've got 10 days that they could come and beat you up and fight you before you could use Jessica to force them back into peace. So if you think someone's going to fight you, sometimes it could even be beneficial to break a treaty with them early. Then when they eventually do come try and fight you, you can then immediately use Jessica to force that into a peace. Some 4D chess games going on there mentally, but if they break the treaty, they can fight you for 10 days before you could force peace them. If you broke the treaty earlier, then when they eventually come, they might have a smaller or no window at all where you could force peace on them immediately. They might be able to back off and then break that, or they might be able to, or they'll be able to back off and break that after 10 days, something like that. But otherwise, they will have to, if they want to fight you immediately, they will have to betray you and take that penalty. Something to think about. An interesting opportunity is always if people are fighting the Ekaz. You can't take the Ekaz sanctuaries, but if Vernius was to maybe annex or liberate this village here, well, suddenly this land is unexpectedly not a sanctuary, and from across the map you could come in and yoink, start peacefully annexing it. Ekaz loves when that happens. You should do that to them, see what they say. It's very funny. Also, the Ekaz is the ideal Atreides neighbor if you're Jessica, because they cannot betray pieces. If the Ekaz want to murder you and you force them into peace, they gotta just sit there and stew until they can eventually break that peace treaty and come back and attack you again. And that's when you ceasefire them, and you ceasefire them, and you ceasefire them, and then you force them into another truce, and they have to walk back home and sit there and stew in anger. So Atreides love an Ekaz in the lobby. They're a natural counter to them. The Ekaz nobility won't allow them to break truces. Of note, Judge of the Council is a super good position for the Atreides. This one here, allowing you to train guards and judges. Guards and judges are the unique Landsraad units that become much stronger when they fight in your own territory. What do the Atreides like to do? They like to fight in their own territory. So the Landsraad guards are nigh unkillable when they're Atreides, and Landsraad judges are super tanky, high DPS units, right? Judge of the Council is very good. If you imagine yourself being an endgame, Helm's Deep kind of scenario where you're going to be defending your lands, getting some Landsraad guards and judges mixed into your force can do a lot of work. They're super, super good. Atreides really love if you find the Sietch that has the unique alliance that is plus, I think it's plus 50% militia health, hilariously, on top of your plus 100% militia health. You can have heavy militia that have like 1,500 hit points and are basically raid bosses that are impossible to kill. That's always very funny, so keep an eye out for that one. That's your ideal, your premier Sietch alliance there. It's very funny. Everybody loves a nuke, except the Atreides. I would still build one maybe to have it in your back pocket. The critical thing to know with nukes, of course, nukes are especially helpful to force people off or to devastate villages so they can't be captured end game. A nuke could buy you a couple days in the end game if someone's trying to decap your territory, and maybe that's all you need to win the game. But if you need more than a couple days, when you nuke someone, you lose all your Landsraad standing. So let's take a look here. If I've got a Warden here, where's my Warden at? Mr. Warden is, oh, we gotta get out of our Landsraad. Mr. Warden is sitting at 900 hit points. I will launch a nuke up at the ECAS here. Boom, I confirm it. As soon as I launch that nuke, Mr. Warden is down to 700 hit points. He lost 200 hit points from me launching the nuke. And that's because my Landsraad standing has cratered out at 0, and our Proud Liberator gives us 40% extra health per land, for all of that Landsraad standing. So launching the nuke not only puts you in the pits and makes everybody hate you, but it cripples your 40% of the health off of your army, which is maybe could still win you the game if you just need those couple days, but otherwise is a big nerf to yourself. So never launch a nuclear missile as the Atreides, except as an absolute last second, last resort, no coming back from it kind of thing. And along the same standing, be extra careful with your heroes' lives. Gurney Halleck, turn on your forced march and run him away from combat. Don't let him die, because retraining your heroes costs you Landsraad standing, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to spend that. You want your Landsraad standing coming up as much as possible to hit that 500 threshold where you'll be the unstoppable Terminator army. And that's what I got. That's an Atreides army. Special thanks to U12, Nathmate, Kenry, all who let me bounce ideas off of them. Special thanks to everybody who's let me play Atreides against them these last couple days or weeks. Sorry about that each and every time. They feel a little dirty to play right now. They're very good. Hopefully that's helpful. If I think of anything else useful, I will put it down in the comments below. Always happy to answer questions. There it is, the long-awaited Atreides guide. Oh, last one we got is Vernius, probably in a week or so. A Vernius guide. Look forward to that. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate you all, and have fun playing the green out there. See you next time.